This is Miles from Milestone Investing in conversation with Michelle Lowe from the JoySpot, www.joyspot.co.uk. Michelle, tell us about yourself and your experience.
Hi, Miles. Thanks for having me today. So, as you said, my name is Michelle Lowe and my company is called JoySpot, and I do relationship coaching. And I look at platonic and non-platonic relationships, whether that's a relationship with somebody that you're in love with or a family member, or whether it's in business, we look at all of them. Basically, I've been doing this for about 3.5 years. But prior to that, I come from a corporate background. For about 15 years, I worked in investment banking in the US, and I was a corporate event planner there. And it was really interesting because I was sort of the middle piece. I worked with the bankers to develop and design events that they wanted. I would even go out and find events and bring them to them, so sell them an event and market to them. So actually the department was called event marketing. And then on the other side, I would be building relationships with the vendors, the suppliers, and even some of the clients. So I was in a unique position where I was also building relationships on both sides of the fence, so to speak. I was a co-team leader for about 26 people at UBS. For 7.5 years, I worked there.
You said RBS?
UBS.
Got it, yeah.
UBS Investment Bank. Prior to that, Credit Suisse. And prior to that, I don't think they're in business anymore, but Safra Bank, I'm not sure they're around anymore, and also Citibank. But when I worked there, that was called Salman Brothers. And in the UK, when I moved back, I worked for Deutsche Bank.
Okay. So why did you like the banking sector so much?
It paid well.
Aha, okay. So you were there for the money.
Yeah.
Show me the money.
Show me the money. I mean, you did sell your soul to the devil, but I have to say, I worked an enormous amount of hours. Towards the end, and part of the reason I left was I was clocking around 70 hours a week, including travel. And I traveled almost every week. My territory was from Alaska to Chile.
Oh, wow.
So I could be anywhere at any time. I could be in, Rio de Janeiro for 48 hours, flying back to the office, getting ready to do an event in California, flying back, then off to Las Vegas again, then back again, then doing something upstate New York, and then something in New York City. So it was quite grueling. I mean, for anybody who's listening to this, I'm sure it sounds really glamorous. And in some respects it was, right? I stayed in 5-star hotels. When I got on the plane, I was turned to the left, never to the right. Life was really sweet, but you paid the price for it. So
you are working in America, but you've got an English accent. So tell me how an English-speaking person is working in America, and tell us how long you were there.
Well, a wise man said to me that, having an English accent is like currency. And it really is. It really is. Because I discovered very early on that was my pathway to success. And I'll give you some scenarios. So I went there when I was very young, about 18. And I would go into a nightclub and order a drink. And then they'd say, "Excuse me, what did you say?" And I'd say again, "Oh, where are you from?" "I'm from England." "Oh my goodness, drinks on the house." I was like, "Oh, I like this." Go to a restaurant. "Excuse me, is there going to be a long wait?" "Oh, where's that accent from?" "London." "Oh, come to the front, Here's a table." And it was like that all the time. I mean, people just want to talk to you because they want to hear your accent. And I quickly realized that if I took on an American accent, I would just blend in with everybody else. And one of the things you have to know about me was I always strived to be different. Never wanted to be part of the rat pack, never wanted to fit in. I always enjoyed just being who I am, me. So I like that. I was like, oh, another one to add to the list of being different. Yeah, so it worked really well for me.
So are you telling me that you're an American who went to elocution lessons to speak English? Is that what you're telling me?
Did you find out? No, I just, it's quite interesting also because when I first got there, I'm originally from Tottenham. So when I arrived, I spoke really fast with this really strong accent, and many people didn't quite understand what I was saying, as well as all of the, um, uh, idiosyncrasies and all the other stuff that we would, nuances to the language that we would have here. So I quickly realized if I just slowed it down a little bit, and was very clear with my enunciation, that people would really get a kick out of it, and it worked. And what was even more interesting would be when I'd have maybe a phone interview or I talk to an agency and they'd say, yeah, oh my goodness, coming in, I can't wait to meet you, da, 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 da. And then you'd get to the agency and they're sort of looking around, where's Michelle Lowe? Because they weren't expect to see this, right? So where's Michelle Lowe? That's me. Oh, hello, how are you? The shock, and couldn't hide it. And that happened all the time.
A very, very quick experience I had when I was in a place called Denver, Colorado. Yeah. And I wanted to go to the main town hall because they had like a Martin Luther King exhibition at the time. Okay. And this in the 1990s. Anyway, so I'm dressed in a t-shirt. I'm a tourist now. I'm dressed in a t-shirt and jeans. You know how we go. And I'm just walking around. But I had no idea where I was. So I went and asked this lady. I'm approaching this white American. I could see fear in her eyes. I could see it. Oh my God, oh my God. and I approached her. So I realizing what was going on. I basically gave myself at least maybe, I don't know, say 5 yards away from her. And I asked her, could you show me, or could you tell me where the town hall was? Where are you from? And then all of a sudden she became curious. Where are you from? And all her fear disappeared. I could have been a psychopath from England, but she didn't. Do you know what I mean? She was very engaged now. Anyway, we got into conversation. What are you doing here? And I was on vacation and I'm going to Hawaii. I was going to Mexico, then Hawaii soon after that. And she goes, oh my God. And then we got into this big old conversation, right? And then she said to me, here's my telephone number and here's my address. Can you send me a postcard from Hawaii when you get there? And I'm thinking, hang on, 5 minutes ago, you were scared of me.
Right.
What is going on there? And it's the currency, the accent over there. It's all of a sudden, and it's really funny because I think Britain clearly have done some incredible branding of themselves internationally because the accent, obviously, I'm not the reason why everyone thinks the British accent is great, and neither are you.
Right,
but you turn up, and the impression that the Brits have created in America is one where it seemed to be one of intelligence, elegance, and class. They just see it, and so instantly you are put into that category, and so you're deemed to be better, and you've got more currency because of it. And I just think it's very, very interesting. So you're a Brit who spent time in America, and then you've come back.
And then I came back.
So tell us a story of why a Brit would go to America and then come back.
So the plan wasn't really to come back, but I found myself in an unhappy space. And one of the things I love to tell people, as you see me, Wizzy Big, what you see is what you get. I'm usually always happy, always smiling. That's my natural stance. And I was getting to a point where I was just not feeling like that anymore. I was just exhausted, working, and suddenly start to feel like a hamster on a treadmill. It's just going around and around and around. I was married at the time, and my marriage no longer served me, to put it very simply. It just wasn't working. So the job wasn't working, the marriage wasn't working. I was really burnt out, stressed out, aches and pains in my neck, just feeling out of sorts. And I thought, you know what, I've got to do something radically different. Like, just leaving the job means I'm still married. Just leaving the marriage means I'm still with the job. Leaving both of them, okay, I could leave both of them, but will I truly be one with myself? And that was the problem. I felt like I was losing who I was. The relationship that I know to have with myself, that's really beautiful and really, I have an intimate relationship with myself, which might sound strange, but I really know myself well. And I just felt off kilter, I was unbalanced. And I knew the only way to make up for that was to do something radical. So I decided to move back to England, give everything up and just move back. And I don't think the intention was to start again or to be here full time, because I rented my apartment. I didn't sell it immediately. But my mum was also getting older, and I thought, well, you know what, maybe this is a time to just go back home and sort of check in and see what's going on there. And I've been gone for so long. And I would come home every so often, but I recognized that things were changing and England was really becoming much more modern and catching up to the States. Every time I'd come home, I'd feel like, I feel like I'm in New York when I'm in London. You know, everyone's dressing the same. Everyone's got that same kind of swagger and everything. You know, I think I could do this. I think I could do this. So it was a build up, but in 2011, I came back and it was a reality check.
Now, what does that mean? Because I remember going to New York and I was quite young at the time. I'm thinking I need to just immigrate from England. I was born here and just go to New York. And New York persuaded me, no, don't do that. London is better. Because I remember at the time having the distinct feeling that if I got into serious problem in America, I could be shot. In London at that time, obviously in this early 1990s, the chance of me being shot by a random stranger was very, very small. Yeah. And there was no sense of danger there. And I remember, and I wanted to bring my children there too, by the way. And I'm thinking, I did not feel safe with my kids in New York relative to London. And I was cured of the need to go and live in New York. So when you came back to in London 2011, what was your reality check?
Well, you know, again, being in New York, everyone was so impressed that I was British, and I was so British, and I had this whole Britishness about me. But when I got back to England, I realized I was really American. I was just an American with an English accent. And so I felt it was really difficult for me to assimilate back into UK society because I was really different. I struggled with the dichotomy of seeing very few blacks having moved up the ladder, which I now know isn't necessarily true. We're just not as aware of who is where. But
I know what you mean.
I didn't see anything. There was nothing reflective. And the first place to look would be in the media, right? So when I saw Trevor McDonald still on the television doing the news or doing programs, and I left him there, and there was maybe 2 or 3 more Trevor McDonalds, I was like, wow, in 20-something years, nothing's changed? That's crazy. I'm looking at the CEOs of companies, and there's a handful of black people. And if they are, they're not from the Caribbean, they may be African. So I was really struggling with that. And I was struggling, I won't get into it because it's a different conversation, but I was really struggling with what I was seeing, that a lot of black men were choosing not to be with black women. It was just so obvious. And I say it's a choice. It's not. Is that a British thing phenomena, or is that like an international phenomenon with America as well? No, it's a British phenomenon.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was shocked. I came from a place where black men would just be falling all over you, and I got here and it was sort of like, you think someone's smiling at you, and then you turn around and realize, oh, he's looking at her. He's not looking at me at all. Actually, he's looking through me at her. Okay, this is how they roll. Okay. So there was a lot of rude awakenings for me when I got here. Lots of different things. Customer service was another one, and still is. In America, it's all about service. One thing, you can say a lot of things about Americans, but you go in a restaurant and they're going to take care of you. You go in a store and they're going to take care of you. You're going to feel like you're the only person ordering a meal at that restaurant. You're going to feel like the only person buying something in that shop. Customer service is everything there. And so I couldn't get over, I'm going to a theatre, I go to a restaurant in London and I say, my show starts in an hour. Can I order blah, 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 blah? And I give them the menu. Okay. I give them my order, excuse me. And, 30 minutes later, where's the food? I said I was going in the, it's coming. So I came from also New York's very sort of fast, make it happen, yesterday. London's. So I also had to adjust, right? There was a big adjustment period for me because I was still running on that treadmill. And I get here and everybody here is strolling in comparison, So big adjustment for me, big adjustment.
Now, I also experienced the customer service of America. Some of it can feel fake. I remember when I was in California, it felt a little bit fake. And other parts, actually, this feels like that's who they are. It just feels that way. Yeah. But here's my question to you, if you know the answer. What is it in the psyche or the training or the conditioning of Americans that make them think it's important to do that? What's going on?
Money.
Okay.
Because it's a huge tip in society. And maybe not in the
I get it.
as much, but in a restaurant, you know, they make a very base salary. Let's say it's a minimum wage and you live off your tips. So you're going to give the best service because the better you are, the more tipping you'll get. And tips are quite high. In New York right now, a tip should be around 20% of your bill.
Do you know what's funny? I went to, I think it was the Savoy Hotel, I think it was. Anyway, I went to buy some investments. And, you know, and that was, I just had a good day that day. And, you know, when you have a really good day, you just want to just feel good. Anyway, so I go to the Savoy and I'm having a meal. And I was with a friend. And the experience I found was so good. I walked away thinking, I just feel like I'm the King of England right now. I mean, they just made me feel really good. And I'm thinking, what really happened? I'm at my table and I'm being treated like royalty. I then go to the bathroom and there's a guy in there and he does the same thing. And I go to the cloakroom and they do the same thing. And I'm thinking, why would we do that to each other anyway? If we know that's the impact of making people feel good because then you bring out the very best in everybody, why would we do that anyway? Why would we reserve that just for royalty or for people we perceive to be in a good position? What's going on there?
Well, we could look at it another way. And I talk about this when I'm coaching people in business. One of the things that is really important is to create an experience. And that's kind of what I did when I did events. I mean, a lot of people think of events and conferences. Let's talk about that a little bit. A lot of people think about conferences and events as an opportunity to have some fun or a conference to learn something or a seminar. But when you're in a business, it can be part of your bottom line and people don't realize that it is a marketing tool because you create an experience. You let people know that when you come into the fold, when you're with us, this is how we will always treat you. See, it's more than just, oh, you came to this event and you had a great time. No, this is how we treat you at an event. This is how we treat you when you do business with us. This is how we treat you through your entire experience of the time that you spend with us. It will always make you feel like a king or a queen. That's the difference between the big guys and the small guys.
Okay. Now, I want you to take me into your corporate experience, right? So what things do you know that we, Joe Public, don't know about why we feel good when we're in your presence? What are you doing exactly?
Well, we really get to know our clients, and that's one of the things I think is lacking in business today, especially in small businesses. Getting to know your client is really important. And I'll give you an example. When I worked in banking, let's say we were doing a conference in Mexico. The event manager might come to me and say, listen, John Jones is having his 50th birthday, and he doesn't know that I know that. So what I want to do is we're going to pull him to the side, we're going to have a cake, and we're going to have some drinks, and we're going to do a mini cocktail party for him to make him feel really special. And of course, he brought his wife, so we'll bring his wife, and, you know, we've informed a few of the friends together and just make them feel really special. Now, if your investment banker calls you up and says, hey, happy birthday, great to hear, you know, what are you doing for the day, blah, blah, yeah, you feel good. But someone puts on a mini party, that's taking it to a whole other level. You're saying that we have a friendship. It's beyond just business now. Now we're building a friendship. We're really strengthening that relationship. And I think that's what's key. Strengthening the relationship at every opportunity that you can do, that is possible, excuse me. And one of the ways to do that is to get to know your client. Now, if you have thousands of clients, you can't get to know every single one of them, but you're going to have maybe your top 5 clients that either can give you repeat business or, you know, have the potential to give you repeat business. Mm-hmm. And it's your job to find out what's important to them that you can translate into dollars for yourself. How can you make that happen? And that's by finding out what's important to them and making sure that that's part of the experience they have with you. So for example, they may know, I mean, a very popular thing to do was have golfing events. As we know, lots of great deals are struck up on the golf course. So I think some of the best golf courses in America. But it may not even be that way. It may be just having a conversation with one of your clients and they said, oh, you know what, Miles, you know, my dream is to do drive a Formula One racing car, just, you know, for half an hour, just for the hell of it, you know. And you're like, oh, okay. And then you decide to create an experience around that. So they would call me and say, Michelle, my number one client mentioned this to me in a conversation when we were having drinks the other night. I want you to create an event where they can do Formula One racing for half a day in wherever, you know, I've forgotten what the famous place is in the UK now. Is it Brands Hatch? I think it's Brands Hatch.
Brands Hatch.
You know, I want them to walk away feeling like $1 million. It's really, now that's the big numbers and that's the big thing. But when you're a smaller business, it can be something really small as saying, you know, hey, I'm going to be in your neighborhood next week. Can I pop by and see you and just talk to you about business and how things are going? But yeah, and you walk in with a beautiful container of biscuits from Marks and Spencer's, or, you know, something from, I don't know, one of the high-end department stores, some teas, you know, whatever, something smaller, but their walkway chuffed like, wow, they took the time to come and see me and they brought me a gift. Might have cost you £50, but it might have gained you 10,000 down the road. It's all about building the relationship.
Now, I can see how that would work really well in the business context, because you can actually see the dollarization, let's say, of that relationship. Now, imagine in a personal situation where you come home to your wife, your husband, and you can't necessarily make that dollarization connection, okay? But you still want to have a good relationship, obviously. I've noticed that women are more sensitized to the importance of this than men are. What is it you women know that we don't know? What do you know?
Because we know what we want at the end of the road. We know what we want, and we know what your needs are. So we make sure we fulfill those needs to get what we need at the end. Because if I'm happy and I make you happy, then we're happy.
I want the guys to understand what you know that we don't know. Because I know a lot of guys mess up.
Yeah, they mess up because they think,
and we don't know what's going on. So
let me run up with a bunch of roses next weekend because it's Valentine's Day. Okay, that's great. Or I got in trouble, so let me go and buy some flowers. It might be something smaller than that that just says, you know what, I just really want to understand what I did wrong because I really didn't mean to upset you. And they might be like, whoa, you're actually asking? And of course you might get a rollicking after that. But then you could follow that up with, okay, sweetheart, I'm going to make you a cup of tea. And she knows that you hate making her a cup of tea. But the fact that you're doing it for her means that you're going out of your way. And that would be impressive to her. Be like, wow, he knows I'm vexed. I told him what I thought, and he's still making me a cup of tea. Okay. You know, you can see the feathers coming down from the peacock.
Okay, but I want to explore that first bit. You said that women are more sensitized than men because women know what they want.
Yes.
So for the guys listening to this this conversation now, what is it that women want? What's the end goal? What do you want in a personal relationship? What are you actually looking for?
I think women want love, compassion.
I'm making a note now.
Love, compassion, and support. And that word support is different for everyone. Some women need emotional support, some need financial support. But I would say those are the three things that most people are looking for. And acknowledgement. You know, I think that we're not often acknowledged for the things that we do. If we're running a household, working full time, taking care of the kids, taking care of you, there's an assumption it's your job. Well, yeah, it's my job, but doesn't mean, if anybody does a job well, doesn't mean they don't want to be acknowledged for it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Or you could actually make it explicit and say it's your job, but also it's the man's job to say, well done.
Well, but it needs to come from your heart. I don't want you to just say it's well done because, you know, that's what I'm supposed to say. Do you really believe it's well done?
That's really interesting you say that, because I remember I went on, look, I used to be a Neanderthal. I'm going to tell you straight out. Because I'm a former accountant. And so I was very good with numbers, very good with logic, all of that. But people used to irritate me because they would get emotional. And I'm thinking, what is this? I can't put this emotion on my spreadsheet. What am I going to do with this? Do you know what I mean? And so I would get irritated with people being emotional. But what's funny, I was emotional too. Right. With my emotion, I would almost like be very dismissive of my emotions. So I'll be like thinking, I ain't got time for you. It's me talking to myself. I ain't got time for you right now. I've got things to do. And so I basically compartmentalize, put it into a box, and then deal with it later. But I'm not dealing with it at all. I'm sorry?
Or not deal with it at all.
No, I would come back to it. I'd come back to it, right? But at that moment, ain't got no place in this conversation or in this situation or whatever. And so I would compartmentalize it. So I almost became disrespectful of my own emotions. So when I would see on display in other people, I'm thinking, come on, man, you should get this handled. Compartmentalize it, man. Let's get back to what we're doing. Do you know what I mean? Now, that approach doesn't work in a personal relationship. Where you say to the woman, just compartmentalize the man and start it all later. It doesn't work.
You know what does work is if you're in a fiery situation, it's always great to say, you know what, I'm just going to take a walk. Because you don't want to say the wrong thing because you're so heated. And I will come back to this.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, luckily I have that in my relationship when things are really heated, he will take a very long walk, maybe 2 hours. But, you know, sometimes I always think, you know, what you say is so important. And not just what you say, but how you say it. So if you just, before you open your mouth, you just say, you know what? I'm just not going to answer that right now. I just need to just calm down, cool down, and I'll come back to it. Because when you collect your thoughts, maybe what you thought was a big deal wasn't that big a deal in the first place. But in that moment, because you were irritated about something else or someone else aggravated you, then you responded in that manner. So it's good to just step back.
Okay, so really what you're saying, women are nice to men. We're generalizing. Women are nice to men, meet all their needs because in the end, they want the man to know that they're looking for love, compassion, support, and acknowledgement.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to see those words, those 4 things. I'm going to actually put it on this video so that the men can know that for their women who they actually think are important, she needs love, compassion, support, and acknowledgement. Because here's the thing, I think men are foolish when it comes to relationships. We genuinely don't know this. Now, all of us have mothers. Right. Why didn't the mother tell us? Now, maybe it's not culturally the thing, but I would have thought, look, if I know something's really important for my child to know, to make them successful in life, I'm going to give it to them. So if I was a mother knowing this, that my son has no idea that this is what he needs to do and have in place so that he's successful with his wife, then I would make sure they have it. That's interesting. Because maybe mothers then need to know that men and women are not really exactly the same species. We're slightly different. And in fact, there's a guy called John Gray, which I met when I was in America. He wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yeah.
And in his seminar, he was literally just talking about stuff. And I'm thinking, that can't be right. No, women can't be that illogical. No, I can't believe it. So what I did, it is outrageous. I went to my friend's wife, right? My really good friend's wife. And I said, I won't call her names. Let's say Mark. Mark, I want to talk to your wife for a minute. So I want you out of the room because I want her to be straight up with me. Right. I want to ask some questions, right? And he's like looking at me like, huh? And I said, no, I'm serious. I want to talk to your wife, but I don't want you here because I want to talk to her. Because I want to understand the female psyche and she's going to want to please you. So I don't want you here to listen to us. He leaves the room and I'm talking to her. And I said to her, and I was telling her what I learned from John Gray. Right. And then I said to her, is it really true that when we do this, you do that? And she goes, yeah. And I said, are you for real? She goes, yeah. And I'm thinking, oh my God. we really do think differently. Or I thought differently. I can't say all men, because I know some men are more sensitized to the female vibration than others are. But I thought, isn't that really interesting? I genuinely had to hear it from John Gray to know what the woman in my life her needs weren't being met by me, because I just was completely oblivious to it. I didn't know.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. One of the things that I coach about is, talking about your needs, expressing what your needs are. It's so important in the beginning of the relationship. Because you think about a business relationship. If you have a new client, the client comes in and you ask, how can I help you? Basically, or essentially, what do you need? And they tell you what they need, and you tell them what you can provide. And you have that dialogue in the beginning. But we don't do that in a relationship. We just jump in, and then it's like, oh, it's not working out. I'm drowning here. I need to get out of this. Because no one's even taken the time to just sit down and just have a dialogue. And I treat relationships like event planning. A relationship is you know, it's the biggest event of your life. The relationships that you have throughout, they run throughout your entire life. Relationships from the time you're born until the time you die, you have relationships, right? You start with a relationship with your parents, then maybe your friends, your siblings. Then you know you go to university or not. You start working and yada yada yada. Your own family, etc. So there's that theme of relationships running throughout your life, and yet we never think about how important they are. We just get into these different relationships. So that's what I talk to people about in relationships. You know, discuss your needs, and it may feel uncomfortable, but you know what? You'll feel so much better because when the other person understands where you're coming from and you understand where they're coming from, you can make a decision at that point. You know what? I'm really attracted to you, but I think our values are different. We're not aligned in the same place, and therefore this may not really work out. And that's the bottom line of your needs is really what what your values are.
I remember I was dating an American lady, and when I was back in England, we would literally have these long conversations. And this is one thing I had. Can't say all men, but certainly for me, if a woman says I got a problem, she's opened up the file or the software. She just press software in my brain that says solve this problem. Yes. My woman ain't gonna have a problem because I'm gonna get rid of that problem. That's me logically thinking, well, she's got a problem, I'll get rid of it. There's a mouse in the corner, I'll get rid of the mouse. I'll get rid of the problem. So she would, but this is someone who I went on a course with them to see Tony Robbins, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So we've both been conditioned in the same way. We knew what was going on in the dynamic, right? So she understood that if she opens her mouth and says, I got a problem, she's opened the file in my head that says solve the problem. She's opened that file. Wow. So she had to say to me, so this is what she would do. She would say to me, Miles, I've got a problem, but I don't want you to solve it. I just want you to listen and do nothing. Don't give me a solution. I don't want one. I just want you to listen to me, and that's all. And when she did that, I closed the file.
Excellent. Yeah.
But she pressed the button in my head, solve the problem. Yeah. So if she didn't want me to solve it, she would have to press the other button. It's okay. I don't want a solution, but thanks for being caring. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if
Absolutely.
a man cares about his woman, he's going to solve her problem.
Exactly.
So she can't be pressing that button and expecting him to do nothing because we're not wired that way.
Well, I think as women, we tend to share, as you know, we share with other women and we unload or vent. And it's not necessarily because we want an answer. It's just it's a form of release. Mm-hmm. And it's very healthy. You know, it's an emotional approach to dealing with a situation is, you know, maybe if I talk it out loud, I'll hear the answer in the speaking out loud because I can hear back what I'm saying. Whereas, as I like to tell people when I'm coaching them, when you have that idea running around in your head like a 3-year-old toddler, guess what? It stays right there, running around in your head. You can't really get a grasp of it because that's where it is. But when you let it out, then you suddenly hear it and see it in a different format, and therefore you come up with a different solution.
Now, I know you're the expert, so please apologize in advance if I step on your toes here. But my understanding is what you just said is great for females. That's how they do it. Here's what we men do. Not all men, but the category I fall into. When we have a problem, we will find a cave, sit by ourselves, and think.
Right.
Once we're done thinking and we've got the solution, we come out of that cave and we're good to go. We don't need to talk about it. Right. In other words, our conversation takes place internally. Your conversation you described takes place externally.
Correct.
Now, I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but certainly with this woman who I was talking to on the phone, once I understood what she was doing, she didn't need me to solve the problem. She just needed to do what I would do, my cave thing. Do you know what I mean? And also, there's another thing as well. When I'm in my cave thinking about my problems, I don't want her coming in there. That's a place where I need to be by myself. Right. And so if I'm just by myself, you know, sometimes when you go by yourself, the woman might think, oh God, he's upset. He's gone, he's detaching from me. There's a problem. And the answer is, no, it's all right. I'll come back in a minute. But I seem to be over here to sort this problem out. Because in other words, for me, solo problem solving works for me because I realize that there's a genius inside my head. And if I just talk to him, he'll give me the answers. He's there. And so that's what I need to do. I don't need to have a conversation with someone else who who in my opinion isn't that genius. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Now, if I'm talking to Bill Gates about software, he's going to be the person I'm going to talk to. But if I'm talking to him about knitting, I don't think so. I'm not speaking to Bill Gates about knitting because, in my humble opinion, that's not his expertise. I'm having that conversation, and so I'm either going to go internally and tap into what I would call my God's consciousness, or I'm going to go talk to someone who's a genuine expert. Otherwise, but I don't want to talk to anyone who doesn't know. That won't help me as a man. But that's me. So having said all of that, is that something that a relationship coach like yourself is sensitized to, knowing that men and women solve the same problems but in different ways?
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, I'm about to roll out a 5-day challenge, an online challenge that looks at improving relationship communication for some of those reasons that you've experienced. Because, you know, a woman will feel that if a man's not speaking to her and has gone to the Cape, then it must be something I said or something I did. And it has absolutely nothing to do with you and everything to do with what he's thinking and feeling. You know, it's actually about boundaries. He's making a boundary and saying, I need to just step away from the situation and figure this out by myself. I don't need any interaction. I don't need any feedback. I will come to a conclusion at the end of it. And maybe at that end, I'll have a dialogue with you. But for right now, I need this space called my man cave, my boundary, and I don't want you stepping over it, stepping into it or under it. I need to be alone to solve this. And that's really important for us all to know that we all need to have boundaries.
Tell us about the 5-day challenge and how can we jump on it if we're interested?
Well, I'll be rolling it out on Sunday and it will start on Monday for 5 days. What I'll do is give you the link to my website where you can find out more information. Mm-hmm. But essentially, it's just a really mini challenge, a daily way of getting online. And I'll ask you some questions and give you some homework, really thought-provoking about the way you communicate in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And just small tips and techniques that are quite effective to help you look at the way you communicate differently. Because a lot of us think we communicate in one way and we actually communicate in a different way altogether. And so I've run this challenge before and I found that people were really surprised, like, wow, I didn't see that I communicated that way. So that's what it's about.
Okay. And who's the ideal person for this, would you say?
Ideal person is either somebody who's in a relationship and they're having some issues at the moment, or somebody that wants to be in a relationship but knows that every time I get in a relationship, there seems to be an issue with communication along the way. So maybe it's something I need to look at. So you don't have to be in a relationship at the moment. You may be looking to be in a relationship or may have just come out of a relationship. So it may be ideal for quite a few people I know.
Okay. So we touched on this earlier. What should every mother tell her son about how to be a great communicator? What should she tell her son? And what should daughters know as well about being a great communicator? If you were going to advise a mother now, teaching her son, her daughter, what should they know?
Well, I think it comes from the heart. I always go back to the heart, being honest, mm-hmm. being honest with the person, telling them what you're thinking and feeling, and, you know, showing the utmost respect. Treat people the way you want to be treated. So if you offended me, it's fine for me to tell you that, but how I deliver that to you in a caring, loving manner, so you understand where I'm coming from, is really important. It's probably even more important than what you're saying is how you deliver it. Because you can say one thing and say it in 2 different ways, and I take it in a different way. So I think it's really important to be respectful at all times, treat people the way you want to be treated, and communication is key, because then there's there will always be miscommunications here and there, but if you try to communicate really clearly, then someone can really see, okay, I understand what the point that person was making now, and they can see the rationale behind what you were saying. So communication is so key. I can't even begin to say it.
Let me ask you a question. What was your relationship like with your father, and what was he like with communicating with you? What was that about?
Well, I was really fortunate. I had an amazing relationship with my father. He didn't have a great relationship with my mother, but that was more to do with ego. And that's something else that we could talk about another time, because ego often gets in the way of what we're trying to achieve. But as a father, he really made me feel fabulous. He told me every day, you know, when you look in the mirror, you're beautiful. You know, you're a dark-skinned Black woman or girl at the time, and, you know, you're amazing, and you should always remember that. Don't let anybody tell you differently. And anything that you want to do in this life, you can achieve. The only person that can stop you is you. So those were my fundamentals in my toolkit that I left home with and carry to this day, that, you know, I'm amazing, and, you know, no one can tell me differently.
Where was your father from?
Jamaica.
He was from Jamaica.
Yes.
And what sensitized him to the fact that his daughter, her self-esteem needs to be concretized in her personality? What did he know that caused him to be that sensitive to that?
I remember I was probably about 13, and we left London, we moved to the Midlands, and I went to a high school, and I was not the only Black child, but I think I was one of two, maybe three. And, you know, they teased me, they stole my PE kit, they stole my coat, they were verbally abusive, all that sort of stuff. And I'd come home crying every day. And my dad was just sort of like, listen, you know, everyone isn't going to treat you lovely. That's just the world we live in. You know, people are full of fear and they react based on that fear. But you have to stand in your ground, and you have to know who you are. And just know that when people say ugly things to you and call you ugly, they're the ones that are ugly. They're the ones that are throwing out the ugly words. You're beautiful. Remember that. You're a beautiful Black woman. And so I would hear this every day when I come home, and he wouldn't accept me crying. He'd say, there's no reason to cry. That's on them. Put it back in their lap. That's their problem. That's not your problem. You know who you are. Remember who you are. And so that, you know, you hear positivity like that every day, you believe it. So my self-esteem was always up here because my father really loved me and made me believe that, you know, I could achieve great things. So he didn't allow for that sort of, some people might call it weakness, but for him, he probably thought it was weakness, but he believed that, you know, I was great, and he wouldn't let anybody say or do anything other than that.
And you're saying that because he conditioned you with that belief system, you then took that into the workplace and walked with that almost like a protective kind of aura.
Yeah, I've had that thread throughout my entire life of feeling. Anybody that knows me will tell you that. Always positive, always happy, because that's the way I was raised. So I don't really know how to be on the other side of the coin.
Do you know what's really funny? And I didn't figure this out until I had broken up from what I would call a very important relationship for me. But what was interesting is that she was basically asking me to compliment her, to basically give her a self-esteem boost. And I didn't understand why she didn't have self-esteem. I didn't get it. And I was thinking about it, where did mine come from? And I realized my mother was the one who wasn't having her son being shy. And so she would, and my dad would boost my self-esteem. And so I then come into my adult life with this fortification of self-esteem. And, you know, I wouldn't say I had as much self-esteem as Muhammad Ali, but I was coming close to it. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm, and so I would now walk into, and I'm literally would go into a work environment. So let me just tell you what it is. I would in the work environment. My colleagues went to Cambridge. They went to Oxford. They went to Eton. That's where some of the top end my colleagues came from.
Right.
And as far as I was concerned, I went to not even a grammar school. Do you know what I mean? All right. But I walked in there thinking I was the greatest. And not only did I think that, I was going to prove it.
Right.
And you said you did 70 hours. I did more than that. In fact, people were astonished at my work rate. I was going to, because there's no way I was going to let you have in your mind being better than me. And if you ever criticize me for anything, I'd make sure that the last time you did that. Because that area that you pointed out, that may be true. So I'd look at it first. And if it was true that I was incompetent in this area, that would be the last time I'd be incompetent. And last time, I'd make sure that was fixed immediately, because you weren't going to be putting me down over nothing. And I remember having that mentality that, and it happened after a while, that because of that kind of drive I had, I just excelled.
Right.
I excelled in my career, to the point where my then director of finance said to me, you know, the door's open to you. You can go where you want.
And this is it. You know, I'll be talking about it in my webinar, that one of the best things you can have is criticism. You can take a negative comment and totally turn it around. And I'll give some examples of that. But what you did was gave a great example of that was a criticism, and you could have been deflated. And it's all right to be deflated for a moment. You know, your ego gets knocked back, but then you have to sit down and say, well, was that criticism true or was it unfair? And if it was true, if you can be really honest and it was true, then there's an opportunity for you to turn that around and become better at it than you were before, or better than everybody thought. So criticism isn't a bad thing. It's how you take it, how you receive it.
Do you know, there's another story actually. I remember I was going into the HQ department, and I opened this door, and the CEO of the organization I work for, I was going to a meeting, and for some reason I didn't close the door, and he shouted at me, "Close that door!" and I looked back and I saw the door was closed, so I closed the door and went to my meeting. And on reflection afterwards, I noticed that when he shouted at me, I felt some fear. And when I was going home that night, I said, where did that fear come from?
Right.
Where did that come from? And I remember thinking, well, he had I won't tell you his name because he's a famous person, but he had a sir in front of his name. He was Sir whatever. Okay, and he's obviously known. He's in the House of Lords, and he is very, very well connected. And I remember thinking to myself, do you know what it was? I was intimidated by his title.
Right.
And then I decided, that's it. I don't care. He could be Sir God. I don't care. After that, no one with any title is going to intimidate me. Nobody.
That's great.
And the very next day, I went into work with a very different kind of aura and attitude about me, because I fixed that particular problem. And I didn't even know it, that somehow I was conditioned to think people from the upper classes were kind of a little bit better. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And he cured me of it that day.
But you see, you and I are a minority because we were given the tools, fortunately enough, the tools and the techniques of self-love, understanding our worth, feeling good about ourselves, putting ourselves on a pedestal. There are many people that have limited self-belief because of the way they were raised, what they were told as children by their own parents, what they were told by a partner that was trying to bring them down, what they were told by siblings, friends, whatever. The list goes on. And so that's part of what I do in my relationship coaching, is to show people the beauty within them, the strength that they already possess, the natural ability to be so great, but they can't see it because somebody's been treading on them and stamping on them and telling them they're no good, they'll be nothing, they'll amount to nothing. And if you hear that every single day, why wouldn't you believe that? If you hear that often enough every single day, you'll buy into it. So what I do is sort of try to reverse that and work with people to show them that it's within you, you have it, but you just have to see it. And you can't see it if it's been muddied by a whole trailer load of people that have been telling you that you're not worthy.
Wow. Do you know what? You've just told me, and well, I kind of knew anyway, but you just told me the secret to making sure that your children grow up with greatness in them. And you have to install it yourself. The parents are really the first teachers anyway, and you have to install it early. I was lucky that my mum loved me enough to say, when she saw me being shy, she said, no, not for my son.
Exactly.
My son's going to be, on a higher level. And in your case, your dad said, my daughter's going to step up. And the consequence of that is that when you were in the workplace, when people did think they may have some kind of, I don't know, psychological edge over you, that you weren't having it. Because I remember this, like I said, this guy, he was, I won't tell you who he is, because like I said, he's a famous person. But he actually took me into his office, because I don't report to the CEO, I report to the CFO. Right. And so I'm in his office and we're talking. And I'm thinking, why am I here? Because he was telling me about his life. He's literally just talking to me about his life, about his career prior to this, and so on and so forth. And at one point I'm thinking, why am I here? Because I'm busy. I'm a busy person. Why am I here? Anyway, so I found myself getting bored at one point, and I said, no, pay attention. Just pay attention to him, because there may be a purpose for this. So just pay attention. Anyway, so I'm listening to his story, and then maybe after half an hour or so, he goes, oh, my next appointment's coming up. I've got to go now. So thank you very much. And basically, that was it. And I walked back to the office thinking, what was that about?
Oh, yeah.
But let me tell you this. About less than a week later, my boss said to me, I said to you earlier, the door is open to you. You can go wherever you want to go. So, and by the way, he was famous for being a very good people person. he could suss people out. Do you understand? So his conversation with me was him trying to suss me out. Because I didn't go to Cambridge, I didn't go to Oxford, didn't go to Eton, so they didn't know who I was. They wanted to suss me out. Who are you? And here's the bottom line. In this society, the very, very top jobs are given to what they call safe pair of hands, right? You have to be a trusted person who's a safe pair of hands. And they ain't giving you certain positions if you're not a safe pair of hands from the perspective of those who run the show. And clearly, after spending time with me, he realized, this guy's got substance to his character. Do you know what I mean? There's something solid here. There's something solid going on. And he's someone who can be trusted. You see what I mean? And he made that assessment and then basically came to my boss and said, my boss, yeah, this one can go through. And at the time, I didn't really understand what they were really telling me. Do you know what I mean? Because I was naive toward this stuff and I was in my 20s then. But like I said, my mum did my solid structural foundation work with me when I was young, and your daddy did it for you. And it would be great if people listening to this conference call could realize that if they can give that to their children when they're little, they will be setting their kids up for success later on.
But remember, it's not easy for you to instill in your child something if you don't possess it already. And that's part of the problem. A lot of the parents don't have that confidence. So how can you pass that down if you don't already possess it? So that's also part of the problem. If your parent, if you know it and you see it, that's great, but not everybody possesses it. So that's another issue, and they're not getting it in the schools. And so then that turns into different directions when it, we could go on about that, But one of the things I wanted to mention was I co-authored in an anthology called Chocolate and Diamonds. And one of the things I wrote about in that book was self-preservation. And it was just really interesting because, again, I talked about leaving my marriage and why I left the marriage. And what I want to say to you is, I can tell you more about the book. But after I wrote the book, the feedback I got was from a lot of women that said, how did you do it? Can you tell me? How can I get out of my situation? That was brilliant. How did you plan it? And I was really shocked because a lot of women, it turned out, didn't have the confidence to leave. They didn't believe that they could survive without this other person. That, if I leave the situation, where will I be? I'll be homeless. I won't probably have a job, and, all the other things, the domino effect of it. And that was part of what really made me realize that, I'm really being of service in what I'm doing, because if you think that you can't survive because of somebody else, then you're in trouble. You have to learn how to be self-sufficient. And you may put yourself in that position, but if you got yourself into it, there's a way to get yourself out. A great example of that is Tina Turner's story, right? Mm-hmm. She was tied to Ike. He had all the money, he had all the rights to her music, he had everything. But she woke up one day and said, I don't give a damn, excuse the expression. I'm out of here. I'm done. If I have to start again, if I have to give up my name, which she ended up winning the rights to, but if I have to lose everything and start again, I will do, because me is the most important thing in this relationship right now. My self-preservation, my love of me. And that's really what I talk to people about. Loving yourself first. Because when you love yourself first, people can shake you, they can rock you, they can do all sorts of things to you, but you won't fall over. The roots are strong. They'll keep you standing.
Let me ask you, where can we get that book? The anthology book you spoke about. Where can we get that?
You can go to my website and find it at joyspot.co.uk below here under products, or you can find it on amazon.co.uk or amazon.com.
Okay, that's fantastic. Now, you mentioned earlier that you're going to be doing a free webinar, and it's called Learn How to Create and Maintain Great Business Relationships.
Business relationships, that's true.
So can you tell us all about that, please, and when that's going to be?
So it's going to be held on the 20th of February at 8 p.m. And I'm really excited to do this because one of the things I found when I came back to the UK was I felt that customer service was lacking, and I explained that earlier. And one of the things I found that the Americans did really well, and that I did in my job, was attracting clients and then holding on to them. Because oftentimes you can get a client, but then you lose them because there's no relationship building. So I'm going to be talking about how you build that relationship, how you maintain that relationship, and how you can extend the life of that relationship. And there's simple things that you can do. Some will be more grandiose, like events and things like that, but I'll show you some simple tips and techniques that everybody can do, that whether you've got a smaller bank account or a large bank account, you can still maintain the relationship by doing some really simple and fundamental things. And I'll give you one tip right now, if that's okay. You know, when you do a great piece of business, the first thing people do is send an email. It was great to see you, blah, 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 blah. Or some people don't, but you should always acknowledge the meeting afterwards. But what happened to the written notes? It goes a long way. When somebody sends you a hand-signed thank you card, I mean, how would you feel if I sent you a thank you note after this? Wouldn't you be like, wow, that person took the time to buy a card, or if they had the card already, to take the time to think about what they were going to write, to go to the post office and mail it. Yeah, they like me. I want to do business with this person. They've thought about me. You know, you've already put this person on another level. Something simple, doesn't cost a lot of money. Simple as that. You get an email, you read 100 emails, right? Yeah, oh, you like meeting with me today, that's great. But you get something in the mail, normally you get bills. So when you get an envelope there, you're like, it doesn't have a clear window on it. I wonder what's inside here. And you open it and you're like, wow, you know, you're touched. You might even put it on the wall. You might put it on your desk for a while, but that person is in your sight. And that's a lot about building your business relationships, being in front of the customer all the time. And I'm going to show you tips and techniques of staying in front of your customer without bombarding them with 100 emails and without feeling like being a nuisance, instead of being somebody that they continually want to do business with.
That is fantastic. So for those of you who wish to go on that
fabulous webinar,
it's going to be, well, obviously it's a fabulous webinar. It's entitled Learn How to Create and Maintain Business Relationships. I will click on it now because obviously there's a free spot, so it's gone. And once you've done that, also if you can go to the website www.joyspots.co.uk and go and get that book she spoke about, and also look at a 5-day challenge. That was also something that was mentioned today. And I want to say, Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And I want to say to your father, God bless you. God bless you, because you've created a diamond that all of us can now benefit from in our community. So, Michelle, thank you very much for your time. And I know that we'll be speaking soon. Take care.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Miles.
You're welcome.